So the title of this video really isn't an exaggeration, by the way, because honestly, I used dating apps for a few months last year, and I realized that it was having some really strange effects on my mind. And once I actually started to realize those things, I stopped using them completely. And obviously I'll get to that later and explain it in more detail. But I just wanted to start off by talking about my experience on dating apps as what I would call an average guy. I mean, I think it's pretty fair to say I'm an average guy, like by objective standards. Obviously, look at me, I'm not the best looking person out there. I'm really short and 5'6", so that sucks. But I kind of make up for it, I'd say, because I'm in decent shape and I think I have good pictures. But the best way I can really describe it, if I were to sum up this video in just one sentence, is that trying to find a real relationship from a dating app is like constantly having a carrot dangled in front of you. It always seems like, oh, maybe there's a possibility, but it just always ends up somewhat out of reach for some reason or another. Like something always goes wrong. For example, obviously, for an average guy, it's very rare to get good matches in the first place. But let's say you actually do match with someone that's attractive, which in my case, it would be like once every few days at best. You send a message, they don't respond, okay, whatever. But let's say they do respond. Well, then it's usually just a, yeah, okay, haha, one of those really short-ass responses. And the conversation just usually ends up going nowhere until she just stops replying altogether at some point. But let's say that they actually do send more than like a 1 or 2 word answer. You're a few messages into the conversation, you think that things are going well, and then boom, you're ghosted. Out of nowhere, just no response. That's something else that's really common. But then let's say they actually don't ghost you, they keep talking to you. You even exchange numbers, set up a date. A few days pass, you text them like, hey, are we on for tomorrow still? And then no response. 1 hour, 2 hours, a few hours, a whole day goes by, then you realize you're cooked again. But let's say you actually do end up meeting up and going on a date. She's a bit rude in some subtle ways, she's a bit uninterested, she's looking down at her phone all the time. Maybe in my case, like she'll make some kind of passing comment about my height, and then at that point you realize like, damn, there's no point in pursuing this. But let's go a step further. Let's say the date actually does go well, the first date. You even text her after and you make plans for a second date. And then what happens a few days later? Ghosted, out of nowhere again. She stops talking to you. And then you just think to yourself like, damn, what went wrong? I don't know, man. That's at least pretty much my experience summed up on dating apps. It's like at every step of the way, there's something that's gonna go wrong at some point. And I don't know, maybe you can relate to that. I feel like based on the people I've talked to, they can kind of relate too. And at the beginning, probably like a lot of you, I thought it was just me. I thought these experiences might just be unique to me because, I don't know, maybe I don't have any game, maybe I'm too ugly, maybe I'm too short. You know, you start to think like, oh, it's probably my own fault. But yeah, over time I realized that this actually happens to everyone. At least like the average guy on dating apps. I don't know about girls, I don't know about like chads or whatever, very attractive men. But yeah, this is the dating app experience for the average guy. Talking to my friends, they have pretty similar things happen to them. And if you go online and look at anything about online dating, it really does seem like a vast majority of guys like me are in the same boat. Just feeling frustrated and burnt out from the constant cycle of chasing and rejection and chasing and rejection. Or even worse, just like being purposefully led on in some cases. And obviously it's like, yeah, the simple solution is just stop using dating apps, bro. You don't have to use them. You can just meet someone in real life. Yeah, 1 plus 1 is 2. That is possible. That's what I'm personally trying to do nowadays as well. But the truth is that it's just not easy for a lot of people. It's more difficult than ever. I've seen the statistics, maybe you've seen them too, about how the percentage of couples who meet from online dating is just skyrocketing. And on the other hand, the percentage of couples who've met in real life are just getting lower and lower. And it seems inevitable, you know, because with social media, the internet, AI, and all that stuff, like, it seems like our world is becoming completely reliant on technology to make us connected, but in a way it's making us more disconnected. I've talked about it in a previous video as well, but like, there's really no more third spaces to meet people, and especially not to meet girls and have romantic intentions going into it as well. Like, not only are there less places to possibly meet girls, but it's also socially less acceptable to do so nowadays. Like to approach girls in public or do day game or whatever it's called. And it's just a result of a cultural shift, basically. Because nowadays, a lot of girls obviously don't want to be approached by random dudes on the street or at the park, and that's totally understandable. And on the other hand, a lot of guys don't want to randomly approach girls because if it doesn't go well, like especially if she just doesn't think you're attractive, you can literally get in trouble for that as a guy nowadays. And it's like, is that really a risk worth taking? Because I feel like a lot of people dismiss it and just say, you just need to get the confidence to approach girls in public, and you're just pussying out if you don't do that. And I feel like a lot of girls might think that as well. Like, oh, why don't I get approached anymore? I've heard girls say that. They might think guys are like psychologically too afraid to approach. But from my perspective as a guy, and obviously knowing a lot of other guys, it's just a risk versus reward kind of thing. Like, if she doesn't think you're attractive, she's gonna think you're creepy. And a lot of bad things can happen. If you do it at work, you can get fired. If you do it at the gym, you're gonna be called a weirdo. If you do it at a park or grocery store or some shit, you're gonna get people looking at you funny. And it's just like, again, it's just a cultural thing that not only is it harder to meet people organically, but it's also less acceptable to approach girls, and that's why people are doing it less, and that's why people have been going more and more to dating apps, because there's really not that many socially acceptable ways to meet girls anymore, especially once you're out in the real world after college and high school. I'd say the only real places where it's considered appropriate to hit on girls are at clubs and bars. But obviously those aren't the best ways to meet people if you're looking for something resembling an actual relationship, because they're just as superficial, if not even more, than the dating apps. And the people there are usually just not even the right people, and everyone's drunk anyways, so that's just like hookup culture and whatever you want to call it. And that whole nightlife stuff, it requires a lot of time, money, effort into it as well. And it's an effort that's not really worth it. Like me personally, I don't think I know any couple who's met from a club or a bar. You know, it just doesn't happen anymore. So long story short, like for all those reasons, like by process of elimination almost, it's not a surprise why dating apps are on the rise, you know? It's like the only viable option that doesn't incur a huge risk or cost associated with it. So logically, it makes sense that more and more people are using dating apps, or at least trying to. At least that's how it was for me. That's the reason why I started using dating apps. Like for example, last summer I graduated from college, I moved to a new city, and I used dating apps to try to meet people because I didn't know anyone, I didn't have any social circle here. But after a few months of being on those apps, like I think I just used the big three, Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, it literally broke my mind. That's the weird part, and I'm gonna try to explain like what happened psychologically. But basically, I'm not stupid. I knew going into it that obviously there's gonna be a lot of ghosting and rejection and bad experiences. It's not like I didn't know what to expect. It's not like I thought it was gonna be a fairy tale once I downloaded Tinder, but I just thought that it's still probably worth the try because there always is a chance of meeting someone cool. And you always hear things like, yeah, with girls it's just a numbers game. If it doesn't work, you just gotta keep trying and trying and trying. Even if it doesn't work 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. You just gotta get it right one time and that's it. That's, again, what people say. Like, don't be afraid of failure, keep going, all of that. And in general, I think that's obviously true as a concept. Like, if you keep rolling the dice and you never stop, you're eventually gonna get a number that you want. But that analogy, it kind of falls apart because there's one specific problem with it that I never really hear anyone talk about. Because constantly going through bad experiences when it comes to something as important and deep to us as dating, it's not just like rolling the dice a bunch of times where you can move on from each failure with no consequences. There are consequences for every time. Because let's say you're using these apps a lot, and like me or really any other average guy, you're just constantly getting zero matches or ghosted and disrespected and turned down day after day after day. It really breaks you in a way, because on a psychological level, your mind is going to take this feedback and it tries to analyze it to come to a conclusion because it wants to understand what's going on. But when you're constantly getting this negative feedback, your mind, being a logical system, it comes to the conclusion that you must not be good enough, that there's something inherently flawed and wrong with you. And over time, if you begin to internalize this belief, it can really ruin your self-esteem. At least I can say that's 100% what happened to me. I know that's also what happened to some of my friends using these dating apps for a while and just eventually quitting. And that's also why you're hearing more and more nowadays, especially from guys, about this whole thing called dating app burnout. You know, it's like an actual thing now. And once I began to understand this negative feedback on a psychological level, that's when I realized like I gotta stop using these dating apps completely because it really fucked up my mental health and my self-esteem. And even though there technically is a chance that I could maybe meet someone really great if I just keep trying and trying, the chance of that is so low anyways that it doesn't outweigh the amount of psychological damage that it would do to my self-esteem from just all of those, again, constant rejections and negative feedback. It's like playing the lottery. Yeah, it doesn't cost you a lot necessarily, and you could keep buying lottery tickets day after day after day. There's a chance that you can win big, but that chance is so tiny that it doesn't justify you losing that tiny bit of money every day. So it's not worth it to keep playing. That's how I felt with dating apps. Like, yeah, even though there's a chance I might succeed on it, I'm just losing that tiny bit of self-esteem day after day after day, and that compounds until I'm just makes me want to crash out. Like I said, last year I was on the dating apps for a few months. I started using them in July once I moved here. And by around October, November, like my mental health was not in a good place. And eventually I realized that dating apps were a big reason why. Because just personally, based on my results, I could get like maybe one date per month if I just really spend time on it every day. Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, obviously I didn't pay for it, but just like if I used my swipes and all that, around one date a month. Because I think I went on 3 first dates total during that time. But not surprisingly, none of them led to anything past that. And eventually I just realized like the juice is not worth the squeeze. Because throughout that whole time, like I said, all those negative experiences just very gradually began to erode away at my confidence and my self-esteem. In so many different ways too. Whether it was going a day with getting like 0 matches, getting ghosted on the app, getting ghosted over text, getting flaked on right before the date, or just having a bad first date where she makes some kind of comment about my height. Not saying this happened to me. Just all of these things, like, it added up and had a horrible effect on my psychological well-being. And when you have, like, a negative mindset and low self-esteem, it seeps into every area of your life. Like, I got a little bit out of shape, I wasn't as productive in my work, and I became, like, kind of antisocial for a bit there, not gonna lie. It turned into a downward spiral that started to get better, actually, once I stopped using dating apps. That was around, like, November, December-ish, I think. And, it's only been a few months, but my mental health has improved a considerable amount since then, I'd say. But the craziest part in all this is that I still haven't, like, recovered, I guess. I feel like those experiences on dating apps have actually had a long-term effect on my psyche. Like, it's literally conditioned my mind into certain thought patterns. For example, I'll admit that nowadays, literally any time I'm texting a girl, even if I didn't meet them from a dating app, I just get really anxious. And that's because I've been ghosted so many times from girls from those apps that I just instinctively come to expect it at this point. So even though I'm not on these apps anymore, it's still any time I go back and forth with a girl over text, my mind just begins to think like, okay, when is she gonna ghost me? She's gonna ghost me after this text. She's gonna stop responding. It's just a matter of time. It feels like a ticking time bomb. Like every time I send a text, it sometimes feels like this is gonna be the last text I ever send to her because she's just gonna stop responding. You know, it's like PTSD from this shit. I'm just expecting to be ghosted at any time. And again, I didn't used to be like this. I didn't used to be completely neurotic when texting girls. It was just like a normal thing to do. But after using dating apps, just for those few months really, and constantly getting led on and ghosted, it literally gave me texting anxiety. I don't know though, maybe I'm the crazy one. I don't know if you've gone through this before, but I'm definitely interested in hearing what everyone has to say on this. So be sure to leave a comment talking about your experiences, especially if you're a girl watching this, like it would be interesting to hear your perspective as well. But anyways, thanks for watching as always, and another huge shout out to my Patreon supporters and anyone who sends super chats in my live streams. Like, I really can't say it enough. And also the people who send like super thanks in the comments and stuff. It really, really means a lot, and I just want to explain it real quick because ever since I started this channel, I sort of made this unwritten promise to both myself and to you guys that no matter how big I get, I would never become one of those people who tries to sell you an online course or private community or coaching calls or all of that kind of bullshit that I feel like most influencers do nowadays. I don't know, it's just something that seems really inauthentic to me, and when I watch videos, I hate hearing people try to sell that kind of stuff. That's why I don't do it. So that's why to all of you watching this who has ever given any amount from your own generosity, not from me trying to sell you some shit, it really means a lot. I genuinely appreciate it, and you guys are the ones who keep this channel going. It really makes a big difference, because even though I'm not even close to making like a full-time income from this yet, it's at least helping me have a little bit extra money every month, especially in these times with inflation and just living on my own after college. So again, it's much appreciated. Also, if you'd like to support me in a different way, be sure to subscribe to my second channel. It's called Less Internet, More Adventures, where I do travel and hiking vlogs, and it's really cool stuff. So go check that out if you have the time.